Welcome to Insights into Success, where today I'm talking to Joey Drolshagen. Now, Joey was successfully climbing corporate America, but he always felt like something was missing. Then, within quick succession, he lost both his parents and his marriage and found himself on the side of the road crying, feeling totally broken. In this interview, I want to understand from Joey what exactly it was that made him feel so broken, what was missing from his life, and what he's been doing since on his journey to success. Well, welcome, Joey, to Insights into Success. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me today. And I'm really excited to hear your story, and in particular about your life at a moment in time where everything really came to a standstill and things changed for you. So I'm wondering if we could start off the interview by you talking about that moment moment in time when you sort of everything hit the wall and it's really changed your life since then. So maybe if you could talk about that, and then what I want to do is go back in time and let's go back to your early childhood and work back up to that point to understand why you got to that point. So tell us about that moment in time, when it was and what happened.
Absolutely, Paul. So I mean, it was kind of like a grouping of time, I'll say, rather than it led to a moment, but there was a grouping. I had done my best to live the way I thought I was supposed to live, right? And so I'm working in corporate America, and it's not what I wanted to do. And I find myself at some point, like at one point, it became so hard in my like early 40s that I just didn't I was like, okay, none of this is working. Nothing I'm trying is working. So I'm going to come up with plan B. Right. And I came up with a plan that I would just put all my effort into retiring as soon as I could. And then I'd be free to live the way I wanted to live, to have the mark I wanted to have on the world and all that. Right. So by 47 years old, I was ahead of schedule to retire at 57 years old. Within a couple years from there, I took a position over in Wisconsin from Michigan, and I was 4 states away from my son, and a surprise divorce came up in my life after a 19-year marriage. And I was just devastated. I didn't know what to do. I was separated from my son, everything entailed in that, right? And then at the end of that divorce, not only was I separated from my son, all that and everything, but that retirement had been dwindled down to a couple $1,000s. So my plan A of stepping out and doing what I wanted to do didn't work. My plan B of retiring early and stepping out and getting that freedom to do it didn't. And then on top of that, within a year of that time frame, my dad passed away of cancer. And then my mom, after a 56-year marriage, just didn't want to be alive without him. And within within a year, I found myself an orphan. And then I was really lost. I was alone. I was separated from my son. I had the retirement, the divorce, and both parents gone. And I remember just this overwhelming, like I had never felt so lost in life. Wow. And I remember going into that thing saying, man, I've tried my very best to be the person that I was supposed to be. I was a good husband. I did my best to be a good dad. I made a lot of money. I went up the ladder to a vice president of sales in corporate America. I did all this stuff. Why is it all taken away so quickly? And that led to the next question being, if all of that could be taken away so quickly, why am I holding on to the one thing that I most want to get away from, the job?
Right.
Over that time period, I ended up, I was driving home from my office one night and I just broke down. I was in my truck on the expressway. I had to pull off to the shoulder and I just sat there and I just started crying and I couldn't stop. It was like uncontrollable. And I just said, God, take this passion to inspire and motivate people away and put anything else in its place. And I'll follow it with all my heart and all my soul. But I don't know how to do that.
Right.
Within that moment, within moments of there, I had something happen to me, like an aha that I had never had before. An opportunity showed up within days of there where somebody walked into my world that ended up helping me take the next step. Within weeks of that moment, I was working with a coach who could help me work with my conditioning, not my mindset that I had worked on from the time I was 22. I thought it was all about mindset. They
Right.
helped me work on that conditioning of what was holding me a prisoner in that place for all those decades. Once I did that, is where I came up with SMT, which is subconscious mindset training. It's a way of helping people make those shifts in those areas. It's exactly what I went through. And I started doing workshops. I got my first 3 clients from there. And within 6 months of that day sitting on that side of the expressway, broken, I resigned from corporate America, from a vice president of sales, resigned, moved down to the mountains of South Carolina. And I've been inspiring and motivating people to live better lives ever since.
Wow. So when you say conditioning, can you tell me a little bit more about that? And then what I want to do, and maybe part of that is you can go back in time, but I want to understand a bit more about what you're talking about with conditioning.
Absolutely. So, we have these things that happen in our life, right? And what happens is we're going down the path and we have something happens and it kind of brings us in another direction, right? It turns us. I'll give you for instance, I have a lot of them, really. We all do. But I grew up being taught that money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah.
That was part of the conditioning I received, that money is limited. There's only so much. Later on, I would pick up on that aspect of it was for other people and not for me. And I would struggle in that area. But I never knew what that was. Today, if you ask me about finances, if you ask me about money, I'd say that there is enough finances available for every living, breathing person to have more than they could ever use. And there'd still be an unlimited supply. That money literally grows on trees because it's paper.
Wow,
That's the conditioning.
That's an entirely different perspective you just described to what you started with.
It is. And it's one thing to say that. It's one thing to get into affirmations. It's one thing to get into mindset. It's one thing to say the right things, right? To programming.
Yeah.
Those are important. Mindset is what we say, what we think is really important. But it's that conditioning that determines our outcome. It's that conditioning, which is at the subconscious level, that determines what we're going to experience in life. So you know how some people talk about that wishful thinking, or they talk about how, oh yeah, you're going to talk your way into this great life. I used to think for a long time I could do that, but I never could because of that subconscious conditioning. You have to deal with that. Once you start shifting that, then all the mindset stuff, then all of the words we use, the thoughts we entertain, all of that stuff plays in, but it gives you a bigger outcome. If you're ignoring that subconscious mindset, if you're ignoring that, and we all have it, right? I grew up in a very low income, blue collar family right outside Detroit, Michigan. 7 or 5 kids in the family, 7 people total. My mom and dad both worked full time and struggled my entire youth, right? So we all have that. If you're raised by, Donald Trump's kid, if you're Donald Trump's kid, you've had different conditioning than what I have. Not that you don't have problems or you don't have things you got to work through.
Yeah.
I would imagine being Donald Trump's kid, you'd have a lot. But
yeah, I'd rather not.
I'm just kidding. But we all have that conditioning. It's not our fault. It's not like we're born and we check a box what we want. And it's not the people's fault who gave it to us either, because they were doing the best they could do. But we have conditioning like that. My big one that really kept me imprisoned until that moment when I was sitting there was that a man gets a job, supports a family, and hopefully lives long enough to enjoy some life in retirement. That was that conditioning that when I tried to step away, or I tried to break away, or I tried to go out and do my own thing, or I tried to do any of that, that pulled me back into it.
Right.
Another part of that conditioning is that a job has security. If you're going to raise your family, the responsible thing to do is you get a job. You work for the paycheck. You work for a company, and so all of those combined, there's been a whole slew of them, and we all have them. But people that are stuck, people that can't move into what that is that they truly love to do in their life, it's their conditioning, not their mindset. Most of the people I work with, they might be negative when I meet them because of what they're going through and their situation, circumstances and such. But going into it, when we get below the surface they're very positive people. They believe in goodness. They believe in love. They believe in, all of that stuff. But they've never been able to take that piece of it and bring the results that they so badly desire, Paul.
Wow. Yeah. That's going to lead on to a question actually I've got later on. But tell me a little bit more about your upbringing. So you grew up, where did you say? Just outside Detroit there somewhere?
Yes. Yeah, I was a mile and a half outside of Detroit, Michigan, in Roseville, and I was the second oldest of 5 kids. So there's 3 of us boys and then 2 girls,
Yeah.
below. And like I said, I mean, we had fun as a family, But my mom and dad would take us fishing. They would take us, we had a pop-up camper. I don't know how the heck we ever slept 7 people in a pop-up camper, but we did. And we had Christmases, and we had it was like they did a great job showing us love.
Yeah.
And showing us and bringing fun and things like that. So, but I'm telling you, from the time I was a young child, man, I would watch my dad work. He worked on heavy equipment. I would watch him work and work and work until he somehow broke himself. It could be his back, his hip, his knee, or something that would just kind of give out from all the hours and pounding and everything he would take. And then he'd have to go for surgery, and then he would recycle, and then he'd get healthy, and then he'd go right back to it again. And he'd work as many hours as he could. My mom started out, the time I was growing up, she was a court reporter. So when we went to bed at night, my mom would do dictations all night long, and she'd still be doing them in the morning. She would try and sleep while we were at school, which is why I always had a hard time faking sick and staying home.
Yeah.
Because she'd have to take, but I mean, they worked like I could see them wear down their health. I could see their relationship. They stayed married that whole time. They were in love. They ended up doing awesome things, later on. But in that time of me growing up, I saw that friction between them because of the stress and the pressure that they were under. I've seen my dad not eat dinner, so there was enough for the other 6 of us.
Wow, that's pretty humbling. So when you were at school, I don't know whether it was talked about or not, but was there an expectation as to what sort of job the kids would get when they left school? Would it be just kind of blue collar, or were you encouraged to go for higher learning? I mean, what was...
my whole time, from the time I think it was the 4th or 5th grade, I was still in elementary school. I had a teacher tell me, she said, Joey, there's people meant to work with their head and people meant to work with their hands. You're going to work with your hands. And she told me that multiple times. And I took that home, and it bothered me because I didn't get good grades in school. I didn't care so much about fully applying myself there. I did care about playing and in my imagination, and I cared about goofing around and being the class clown. Like, that's how I was, But I brought that home, and I asked my mom about that. And I was like, man, and I talked to her about it. And I don't remember the whole thing, but I remember her saying, yeah, you probably will. I see that in you. I see that you're going to work with your hands like your dad. And so that was what I grew up believing. So when I came out of high school.
That was your conditions.
I wanted to quit high school. And my mom and dad wouldn't let me. One of their biggest things they had is that every one of their kids are going to finish high school and get their diploma. And they didn't. My dad didn't. So that was their expectation, where my expectation with my son is he gets at least a 4-year degree, even if he goes on from there and doesn't ever use it, but he gets that for himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I came, I wanted to quit high school. They wouldn't let me. As soon as I graduated, I got a job in a shop. I started out in maintenance, just cleaning grease pits and stuff and I felt like that's what I was supposed to be doing.
And what happened?
What happened is then from there I got into construction for a while, and I thought that was really cool because I was knocking old houses down and putting them into the pit of the basement, breaking them all up. So I thought that was cool, operating heavy equipment and stuff, and it was following the tracks of my dad. He was always my hero. And I met a friend, and we got to talking, and he was a very high level in the pharmaceutical companies. In fact, he just passed away at 60 years old, about 2 months ago. Wow. Really, really close friend of mine. We've been friends for 30 years now or something. And he kept saying, there's more into you than what you're living. And he really, without being direct or without being an ass about it, he just leaned into me. He leaned in, and within the matter of months, he had me hoping bigger, expecting bigger, things like that. So I started talking about bigger. At some point, he goes, let's go grab a coffee and talk. And I go, okay. So we did. We would sit and talk. And he pulled out these cue cards, and he had interview questions on them. And he started asking, and I go, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not doing this, you know, and I was really turned off to it, but he stuck with it. He stayed in there. It might have taken him 45 minutes, but he finally got me to answer one, and then another, and then another. And do you know, within 6 months from there, I went to a major corporation and got a job. And all I wanted was a laptop computer and a pager.
Yeah, and that would make you feel important.
And they gave it to me. That was part of the job, you know, and it was in, and the other thing that was huge about it is it was in white collar, you know, it was doing white collar work, which completely vamped around that other side. And I got into there, and there was all the excitement, all the joy, like everybody's proud of me and everything of what I'm doing and stuff. And it really, it built that steam underneath me to keep building it and growing it and growing it and growing it, and get my degree and then get another degree and then take another promotion, and take a relocation, all the way up to a vice president of sales.
Right.
You know, 28 years later, I'm a vice president of sales, helping companies going into bankruptcy to come out that other side back into profitability. I'm building territories, you know, within the United States and worldwide, really. You know, I'm doing things like that, and I was good at it, which made it even more confusing within inside of me, because I thought, if I'm good at this, why don't I like doing it? Anybody surrounding me would say, man, you've got it made. Oh my God, you're making the bucks. You got the company car, you got the position, you got, you know, this, and inside, Paul, through that whole thing, I felt like, man, this is not me. I'm not living my life. I'm living this. But I didn't know it wasn't my life for a long time.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. So with your, so you got married, and your drive to success, did you, I think you've mentioned to me off camera that you actually were running a side business and everything as well. So you're really trying to hustle to build your finances. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I had done things. I had multiple construction companies. Some of them weren't successful. Some were very successful. I've built houses. I've refurbed houses. And the whole thing, like I said, you know, later on, because from the time I was 22, that flame ignited in me that I wanted to spend my life inspiring, motivating people to live better lives. Like, I wanted to have a huge mark on this world. I didn't want to be in this box of a job or career or things like that, you know? So all these things I'm trying to do to get to that. And so I would try to step out, and I would try to do this, and I tried to do that. And it always felt like something was stopping me. Later on, I'd realize it was my conditioning, but I didn't know that for a long time. So I'd go back into mindset, and I'd go back into this, and I'd go back into this. So I would create these companies thinking, once I came up, you know, even before that, once I came up with, before I came up with the plan to retire as soon as I could, I was like, if I can put enough money, I can get out that way. And so I would try to do these companies while I worked, while I was a dad, while, you know, all this other stuff and everything, all at the same time, always trying to get to the point of where I could live through my passion.
So tell me, that passion, you said just before that it sort of came when you're about 22. You felt that you really what you wanted to do was to help others and get them to unleash their potential and doing what they really want. Was that in any way linked to your friend and his interviewing you with those cue cards, and you then realizing that you didn't have to be a blue collar worker? Not that there's anything wrong with that either.
Yeah, right.
But that there was an opportunity for you to break the mold and get into sort of corporate world. Was it linked to that at all, or was quite separate?
Separate, but everything in our life is linked, right?
Yeah.
Everything in our life is linked. So, you know, I'm trying to think when I met him. I think that the talk I heard from Jack Boland that lit that passion inside me happened before I even met my friend.
Right.
You know, before I met Patrick, that had already happened. So I was already along those lines. And for a while, I think I told you when we were talking, for a while, I thought that I was supposed to be a minister or a pastor or something like that. So I would check that out. And then, I don't know why, but for a while, I thought it was a police officer. And I wanted to be a police officer in the city of Detroit. And I'm so glad that didn't work out.
Yeah, I bet you
But
are.
I wasn't, but I was always looking to fill that void inside. And the further I went down those pathways and things like that, the further I would try to do something and it wouldn't work and it wouldn't work. And it just felt like failure after failure after failure. We had talked about The Secret. The Secret came out, right? Oh, yeah. Here comes The Secret. I bought the VHS because I'm that old. I bought the book. I bought the workbook. And I really thought, man, this is it. I'd already been to webinars and workshops and seminars and everything else I could afford, books upon books upon books. And I thought, this is going to be it. And I dove into it. And the further I got into it, the more they talked about mindset. Even though I knew what I knew about mindset, I still dove in. And I did the things they talked about. I woke up at 5 a.m. At 6, I was at the gym. At 7, I was doing this. At 8:30, I was doing, and structured my day. I put together plans for massive action plans of what I was going to do. I had vision boards, affirmation boards, all these positive things I stated, and nothing happened. And within 4 or 5 months, I chalked it all. And I just thought, this is all a bunch of crap. And really what I thought, Pa, is there's something the matter with you, Joey. And I took that inward.
Wow.
From there, I started using food to cope with how I felt, to cope with what I thought was the matter with me, or how I thought I was the matter. And I started going about those ways. And later on, it would be alcohol and it would be gambling. And I would start using those, substances to try not to fill the void, but to put down whatever it was that I thought was wrong with me, that made me not enough.
Right.
And
what do you put it down to, though, in terms of at that young age wanting to go out and help other people? Do you have any sense of why that was? What brought that feeling inside you that makes you want to do that?
I'd always been that way, even growing up and stuff like that. I was the one to help and things like that, and jump in and stuff like that. But Maya Angelou says we teach what we want to learn.
Right. So
you think about this 22-year-old kid who hears this talk, not from her, but the talk I heard from Jack Bowen. And I've spent my life being, having struggle illustrated to me 100 different ways, having limitation, delivered to me a bunch of different ways, like all through life, seeing that part of it in there, but then also seeing the love. It's almost like that combination. When I was in my 20s, even teens, if something happened really easy for me, came together really easy, I was very, very, very uncomfortable with it. If there wasn't struggle attached to it, I felt like I was either doing something wrong, I didn't deserve it, and it would scare the bejesus out of me, really. It really would.
So that's conditioning as well.
So you take a kid that comes from there, and all of a sudden you open him up with having a mark on this world and what that is and everything else. And then you combine that with what Maya Angelou said, that we teach what we want to learn. There's an exact overlay on those things right there.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense to me why it would be something like that. And I'll tell you something, Paul, every time I get to work with a client or I give a workshop or I give a talk and somebody comes to me afterwards, man, it just fills me up with joy that it impacted somebody else's life.
So tell me, through all this, you got married and you said before that it was a shock getting divorced. Do you think that your drive to make all this money, setting up these businesses, running, doing your sales job, presumably you're away from home a lot. So do you think that you might have been disconnected to some extent in the relationship because you're trying to do all these things? And that's why you didn't see what was about to happen, obviously that your wife would leave you and get divorced. Do you think that was a component in it?
I think that as much as I did travel a lot, as much as I traveled, there was one point I was traveling Monday through Friday. I was building a home. I was, and then I took on classes so I could be home for my degree so I could be another degree so I could be home Thursday night because the class was only offered Thursday. So then that backed my travel down. But honestly, we weren't right for each other. We got married really young. Again, as I look back, it was part of that conditioning.
Yeah.
Had I not traveled so much, it wouldn't have lasted as long.
Right. Oh,
That
right. Okay.
separation. So ultimately, what really was for me the cause of it is in growing up the way I grew up and being that way and living so far outside of alignment with myself. One of the things I did early on in my teen years is become a people pleaser.
Right.
And I would become the hero, I would save people, women and stuff like that and everything, and so what happened is I, ultimately what I came to find is people pleasing is truly all it is at its core is manipulation. I'll be whoever I think you want me to be to get from you what I want. I
Right.
didn't know it all that time. I didn't even know that's what I was doing. But ultimately, that is what it was, is I was constantly trying to be what I thought she wanted me to be. I didn't even know who I was. I was so far out of alignment with all that stuff.
Wow.
That was a cause for, that would be more of a cause for it than the traveling and such.
Right. Right. So that's a real common theme for you, though, isn't it? From what you're saying of really living a life that wasn't really you in so many different ways.
Yes. Yeah. And so many people live that way. So many people are, there's a quote that Wallace Waddles says I love. He said, thinking is the hardest work in the world. That's why most people don't do it. and it makes me laugh. But if you think about that, who would go to a job that they hate day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, and continue doing that if they're using their thinking mind of what's possible for them? Who would stay in unhealthy relationships that are draining rather than nurturing and things like that, and keep friendships? Who would spend all of their time in CNN, constant negative news, when there's positiveness and things like that? Like, who would do that with coming through their thinking mind?
Yeah. Mm.
So that quote makes a lot of sense to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But it comes back to conditioning, doesn't it? Which is a theme here, that we're so conditioned that, it doesn't look good if you get divorced. So, you try and really persist with that marriage and that, you want to be seen as respectable. So that means going out and getting a nice, respectable job and, having a nice house and so on and so on, rather than doing what's going to fulfill you internally.
Yeah. And what happens is that conditioning gets built into us. We don't even know what's happening. The people giving it to us don't even know what's happening. It gets built into us, and all of a sudden we start building our world around that, right? So we get in relationships that fit into that conditioning. We get into friendships that get built into that conditioning. We get jobs that build into that conditioning. And so when I resigned from corporate America as early as I did, I literally lost some friends because they could not understand how I would walk away from that. Especially with being within, even at 62, I was within 14, 15 years of retirement, Social Security retirement stuff here. And so they couldn't understand that. And what that does is when we build our life around that conditioning, as we start shifting and changing that, other parts of it are going to fade away because they no longer match with that new direction.
Yeah. So for you, okay, so you got to the point your marriage fell apart. You couldn't live, I guess, describe the lie anymore. You're at the point where it just didn't make any sense anymore. You lost so much in your life. So take us forward from there. So you have touched on it briefly, but take us forward from that moment when you decided you needed to change. And tell us what you're doing.
It's funny the way things come in our darkest hours, right? A lot of times. Now, part of what I do is help people not have to get to that dark hour type of a thing to bring about changes. And it could be a heck of a lot easier and much shorter the way it took me. But I didn't know. And I needed to go through what I went through to get to where I'm at and stuff. So, but from that time I was on the side of the expressway, from the time I started asking those questions, like I did the very best I could do. How can all this stuff be pulled away so quickly? And the one thing that I really want to get away from is still there. That clicked onto something that went beyond the secret, and later on the secret ended up being powerful for me. So I don't want to leave it like I'm trashing it, because I'm not. But that went beyond the secret. It went beyond the mindset. It went beyond the positive thinking mode. And that's when I started understanding, oh my God, it's never been mindset. It's been, I don't even think I called it conditioning then, but it's been this pull. When I try to come away from it, it's kind of like they talk about with the mafia, right? I try to get away and they pull me back in.
Yeah.
That's how it happens. People look like, get a job opportunity and they'll get really excited about it and stuff, and it's something totally different. And all of a sudden they get that draw, and you talk to them 2 weeks later and they're still back in that same job. They didn't. That's that pull back into it. So
Yeah.
once I understood that's what it was, I knew the power of that. I didn't know what it was, but I knew the power and how much it would. So I right away started looking for somebody that could help me deal with those patterns. I'd already been to counseling and things like that and stuff, and that kind of goes into it and stuff, but nothing really forward working. And I ended up finding a coach within a week or so of there that's where the wording, the subconscious came in and things like that conditioning came in. That's where those things started really, really coming to fruition for me. And that's when I got that realization. It's not the mindset. It's not my thinking. It's my conditioning that's imprisoning me. So then I started working with her, and in that process of all of that happened. Now I could go back to The Secret and watch it and get complete different parts of it. I could start getting this stuff in there about the subconscious. I could start getting this stuff in there. They don't call it that, but the conditioning part and things like that. It started completely making sense. So as I was aware of it, as I started using these, and really we developed these tools together, developing these tools, all of a sudden these shifts started happening really quick, like the financial one. Like all of a sudden something would happen, and I like, as I started putting this together, and it took months to do, but as I started putting this stuff together and understanding it, and it started happening, it was like, oh my God, I want to share this with people. And I would reach out to people for workshop, and all of a sudden they would easily call me back and go, yeah, we want you to come and talk on that. And all of a sudden I could work on that then, and where things used to have to be a struggle to feel comfortable with them, getting what I wanted, I could work on that, and I could go through that. And then all of a sudden I would do that, and I got clients in the finances side and things like that and stuff. All of it started coming together. So I ended up getting 3 clients within a matter of, I'll say 6 months from when I started coaching.
Right.
From there, I ended up getting a certification to what I do and things like that. So from there, I resigned from corporate America. Yeah. And I came down here to South Carolina because I always loved the area and everything and such. And now my son's in college and things like that, away at college and stuff. And so I came down here. I found a beautiful home in the mountains, 5 minutes from trout streams, 5 minutes from waterfalls. And I could take the motorcycle or the Jeep and I bought it. And I moved down here. And then everything stopped. I didn't know anybody down here. I knew nobody. So I didn't know how am I going to get more of these workshops? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And for a while, Paul, I started going out every day and handing out 5 business cards. I would try to meet people and give them a business card. And that was a big goal of mine. Yeah. And then I talked to somebody about what I do. And they said, oh, you should go talk to this Chamber of Commerce, and you should do this, and you should do that. And as this stuff's unfolding, but there was one day in that I was down here for probably about 2.5 months. I didn't have any workshops. I put out some feelers. Nothing was coming back. I'm still working with a few clients I had and stuff, but it was winding down now. And I got up one day, and in a panic, I grabbed a pad of paper and a pen, and I made a 3 pages front and back to-do list of every possible thing I could possibly do anywhere, anytime, you know what I mean? And it was exhaustive. And just as I'm finishing that, something inside of me went, wait, I don't have to live like this anymore. And this new evolution, the subconscious mindset training, the tools I had been putting together, learning, everything else had started to kick in. And it was like, no. So I still work with a coach. I reached out. I talked to her. I told her what I was doing. She goes, what the hell are you doing? She goes, get out of there and go do something fun, So I jumped in the Jeep. I jumped in the shower, everything, jumped in the Jeep, tops off, doors off. Like it's a 1978, so it's a vintage Jeep. So I just take off and start driving. I don't even know where I'm going. I end up going to the botanical garden That's about 45 minutes from there. I have a really, really, really nice time. I reconnect with nature. I get back into that place of knowing, you know, I'm doing what my purpose, my mission, and all that. Ultimately, what I do is I go from the facts around me that I'm not getting workshops, I'm not getting, you know, this and that, and I'm not getting to my truth, that everything always works out all the time. You know, everything always comes. So I go and I just enjoy this. I get back into that place. I'm driving home and I get a phone call on my cell phone. And I pull over and take it, and it's somebody. They go, "Hey, I really need your help," and they signed up right there with me to coach them. Paul, they were not on that 3-page list.
Right.
I get off the phone. Now I'm really kind of excited again and stuff, right? I drive back home. I pull up. I go inside, put stuff away, you know, kind of, you know, and at some point I grab my computer, check my emails. There's 2 places locally that want me to do a workshop. Neither one of those places were on that to-do list.
Wow.
It was such a huge teaching moment for me. You know, anytime I'm going forward now, and you know, with last year with the virus, converting everything over online, because I used to love doing in person and things like that. If something doesn't like seem like it went the way I want it to, I just get into nature. I take some time, I back up, I get into my truths, I get into my blessings, my gratitudes, things like that. And then I come forward like that. Where so many people, and the way I used to be, is when something doesn't go the way I want it to, I put more effort and I try harder and I work harder and I put myself, like I saw my dad do, to the point of exhaustion, of almost breaking myself, you know, and we can bring about results that way. But what happens is we put miles of effort in and get minuscule results out of it that way. That's all the stuff that.
Yeah, so that's, you sort of you've really led in to one of my questions, or one of my observations and then question, is that from my point of view, you see so many people go and do various courses for self-improvement. And from what I can tell, anecdotally, few of them really then kick on and seem to get a great deal of benefit out of it. And it seems that there's some people that just continuously do these courses, but don't really seem to ever go anywhere. But talking to you, maybe you give me your opinion on why that is. What's the missing link for a lot of people? Because you've actually described it yourself, that you were one of those people that you were doing all these courses, but feeling like you were going nowhere and blaming it on yourself. So maybe if you can talk about that a bit more.
Yeah, there's multiple reasons for it, really, and I've learned them firsthand within myself. You know, so when I back in my 20s or 30s, really, is when I started getting, you know, coaching started coming out and things like that. So I went and looked for a coach, and when I went and looked for a coach, I wanted somebody who could help me be successful, right? So I looked for somebody that worked with a lot of clients, that had a, you know, huge track record of success and things like that. I did that a couple times before I realized, let me back up. I work with 7 clients at a time. That's all I work with, Paul.
Right.
Because if I work with 20, 30, you know, some of the coaches I worked with 150 to 200 people at a time. Now, how much attention can each one of those people get working with that person? Because what I found is the law of attraction works. It works completely across the board. What's been short on you know, where things have been falling short is the application of that is as unique as the individual applying it. So I'm going to apply it different than you're going to apply it. Every single client, the hundreds of clients I've had over time, each one of them, it was applied differently to them than it was to the next person. So think about if you go to somebody who's working with 150 people at a time and they're herding people through their programs. How much attention are you going to get from that? I'll tell you, people will go to 3-5 day webinars for $15,000 and walk away feeling like they own this world, only within a week later to be right back where they were before they went. Or the person can take less money than that, work with me for 6 months and get guaranteed freaking results, or they get their money back. So many coaches I don't want to rip on anybody, but what I found in my walk is there's so many people out there coaching, but they're coaching from an aspect of how it's going to build them their empire,
Yeah.
not serve the client. I have everything I need in my life. I have my home. You know what I mean? Like I love my life. And I love that I get to work with a small enough, amount of clients.
Yeah.
That when they get done, they go, holy shit, man, that changed my entire life. And they tell other people, and I don't have to spend thousands of dollars on advertising. I don't have to have an affiliate team. I don't have to have a sales team that's always going out there grabbing people to bring in so I can get them in my program and stuff like that. I get to live my life, and I get to live in having that impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
That is freaking amazing. So when people are going out and they're spending this money with coaches who are working with all these people, you're one of those. The people I work with are the big fishes in the pond. It's a small pond, and each one in there is a big fish. That's a big difference for people to look for when they go for coaching. The other thing I'll say is these people are creating these groups and things like that, and they're putting all these people through the groups. But it's no different than a self-study program, really. I have a self-study program that'll get you started. It's a low-cost thing. It's a 4-week process and things like that. But it's really just to spark you and get you going.
Yeah.
It's not an end-all. But these people will market their stuff as it's an end-all. So somebody will take it. They go into it. They're hearing, even if they hear new information, right? They hear new information. They get excited about it. They go through the whatever exercises are there and stuff, and they get this. But they're still dealing with them. They're still dealing with their conditioning. That's going to come up and steal that or pull them away from that. And so within weeks of that, they're right back to where they were before they started. I run groups as well. So I don't want to say, what I do is I work with 7 clients a month, one-on-one. And every week I have a conversation. I was just talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they said, oh, they only meet every other week with their clients. In 2 weeks, I forget what the heck I was doing 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Doing it every week and building upon it, and I have programs that have proven over thousands of people over decades that it works and stuff. So when I do that, but then I have a group, and what I do is I bonus my one-on-one clients into that group. So now they get it 2 different ways. There's life work. I have a portal they log into. They get their framework, their 12-step framework that they go through the framework and stuff. So now they get a 3rd way. There's audios in there that they listen to every day. It's every week. It's a new audio they listen to. So that reprogramming process is really built on all multiple levels. There's areas where they're writing. So now that's another way they're doing it. And it's building around all the possible areas of doing that. When you really, and that's what I guess the bottom thing is when I work with somebody, they get submerged in that SMT, that subconscious mindset training or retraining. They get submerged in it. It's not just something they pay their money and get an hour a week with 150 other people and go through it. That's a big, big, big difference. And the other stuff.
Yep, carry on. No, you carry on.
I'm sorry.
So
because I do
yeah. So like with a lot of people, they talk about a lot of these self-help people, and that they will talk about, you need to take massive action, and like you talked about before, you write your 3-page list and all that. But then you've just before described something which is polar opposite. You described actually leaving that big action plan list and going out into nature and connecting with nature. So tell me a little bit more about that and how that works, as opposed to the other stance of you've got to take massive action, and you get up at 5:30 in the morning and you work to 10:30 at night, and you write your lists, and you've got 1,000 things to do, and you're going to achieve so much more because you've got this big list. Talk me through that, because
absolutely
very different.
Yeah, that one really kind of touches on. It bothers me some to hear that, because what that does is people like me then walk away, and it's like, well, heck, I'm not doing enough. I'm not putting in enough effort. I'm not putting in enough hours. I'm not getting up early enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not everything else. And that how many breakthroughs, how many changes, how many have you accomplished in your life from taking massive actions into it, versus how many times have you exhausted yourself and beat yourself up enough to the point when you're going, you know what, this isn't freaking worth it. That right there. I had a client that came to me for coaching. He actually just came back to me again. We just finished and he came back to me again and stuff. And when I met him, he goes, "Oh, I'm in the 5 a.m. club. You know, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I and he rattled through it and he goes, I accomplish more by 10 a.m. than most people accomplish their whole day." And I go, huh. I go, I typically get up between 7 and 8, probably closer to 8 half the week, you know, but you know, I get up between there and I accomplish everything I need to accomplish every single freaking day. And we started working together. I wasn't giving that to him. I wasn't telling him what he had to do.
Yeah.
He just told me last week when we were talking, he said, "Man, I am so glad you shared that with me because I was miserable doing that." So let me go into about a minute story here, Paul.
Yeah.
When I was doing this stuff and I was still in Iowa, it'd probably be more than a minute, Paul.
That's
When
right.
I do this stuff and I was still in Iowa, I came across a broker and he said, "Man, I don't understand what's going on. I'm bringing these agents in and they're producing decent at these other places. And I bring them in here and it's like they drop down. Their production drops down. I don't know what's going on." So I said, "How about if I take 3 of them and I talk to them for an hour each? And I'll just talk to them. I don't want to know what you want and everything. I want to talk to them." Right.
Yeah.
And what I did, I started with him before I did that, though. And I found out he was a realtor and he did this and he did this and he did this and he broke his life into quadrants, kind of percentages. Right. And
Yeah.
he lived like 60% of his time was work and 15% was family and 5% personal, you know, and he broke it down to the 100%. And that's what he lived in. That helped him be really successful. He went and got his broker's license, put a sign on the door, and went into business as a real estate company. Right.
Yeah.
I'm talking to these realtors. They're smart people. They're people who want to succeed at what they do. One of them is a grandma. One of them is a younger woman. One's a guy in his you know, probably 40, 45 years old, 45 to 50 years old actually. And so I'm talking to them. Where the problem is they were putting all their effort into trying to live this cookie cutter life.
Right.
60% of the time at work, so much with their family, so much. The one woman I talked to, she watched her grandkids. She had an opportunity to watch them 3 days a week, but she could not do that and fulfill the hours in this place at the same time and stuff. So she constantly had that battle. So she wasn't even doing anything for listing or selling or any of that stuff, getting buyers or anything. She was so tied into that cookie cutter trying to meet that. So I walked through it with her. After I went back, talked to the broker, told him about this. I said, "I'd like your permission and you paying me for me to talk to them all again." And I did. I went through with her. I'll just talk about her rather than all three. I went through with her and we came up with what is that balance. She started out with working like 25 hours a week was her load. And within that 25 hours a week, she worked though. She put out stuff for listings. She put out advertisements. She made phone calls, picked up the phone, you know, and did those things and stuff. All of a sudden, within a couple weeks of it, she gets this listing. The same week, she gets another listing. A week, 2 weeks later, something were in there. All of a sudden, she gets somebody calls her out of the blue to buy a house. And these things start happening and they start rolling. Now, all of a sudden, she's at 25 hours. She's going, "I want to work more. I want to find more hours to do this." I stayed in contact with her. The last I talked to her, she was up to working a little over 50% of her time was, you know, she would work during the week. And
Right.
she'd find some time on weekends, but she would balance it all around her grandkids. And she was kicking butt in what she was doing.
Right.
You know, here's the thing. So many people, and so many coaches I've paid tens of thousands of dollars to work with, Paul, that have tried to get me to be a mini me of them. They wanted to be a billionaire. So all of a sudden, I find myself following these actions that this person did. And it's like, I don't even want to do this. I don't want that life.
Yeah.
I don't want to live. There was 3 weeks in a row. I was getting up at 5 a.m. and I was doing this and I was doing that. You know, my girlfriend said to me, she goes, "You're miserable. Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
You know, and that's what they do is somebody will get successful doing something. And all of a sudden they're like, they want to be a coach or they want to, you know, this or that. And they want everybody to follow that process. True leadership. This is one of the things you don't learn in college either. And it ticks me off a little. True leadership doesn't come from a freaking book. It doesn't come from what a guy before you did. It doesn't come with, here's the path, now you follow this. True leadership comes with finding authenticity. What is your authentic path is personable and unique to you, and mine is to me. I don't specialize on getting people through what I've gone through, getting where I'm at or anything else. I help them to get and open up, understand what that authentic path is for them, and then come up with the inspired actions to bring that about, which is totally different from massive actions.
Yeah. So from your point of view, is it kind of like you want people to get on to, for want of a different, better description, the right vibration, to get onto the right path for them, that once they find that path or vibration for them, that things will start to unfold, things will start to fall into place for them, but they've got to find that first.
There's kind of dual paths a little bit, there's dual paths. I'll start with, because I do, like, part of my program is doing dynamic vision road mapping, and there's a process that I take, whether it's an individual or a small business group, sales group, corporation, whatever it is, I take them through that process, because coming up with that vision is how we start opening up to what's really, really possible for us. Until we do that, we see the limitations, the conditioning pops up, to this, to that, the fears, doubts, worries, all of that stuff starts playing a role in it. Once I can help somebody get to that, and I have a process of every single person I work with, Paul, starts and goes through that, is we start developing that dynamic vision through the road mapping piece I have. We start opening that up. At the same time, I start working with people on the mindset side of it, the words we use, the thoughts we entertain, start becoming aware of that. Mindset is a key, but it's not the fix-all. And that's where I got misconstrued or misunderstood when I was trying it for all those years. Once we do that, ultimately what I do is help people get that vision for what their life is. And I've had clients who have resigned from major universities and have been out on the road for 2.5 years, going to all the national parks in the United States and living there and blogging and, creating finances. I had a teacher who came to me who now has a bus that she drives around to industrial parks, and people come outside, and she has a boutique in the front and a hair salon in the back. They walk outside their office, step in, get their hair cut, and go back into work. And loving life. So it's not helping people find the business, find their job. It's helping people find their passion and bring that to life. Yeah. And so as we start going through that process, everything I do is to bring up, it's to touch on that conditioning. When I say about subconscious mindset shifting or training, it's about bringing down. We have to bump on those things in order to understand what they are, be aware of them, and then we can bring them up for repatterning, release, shifting, whatever it may be. But it's so that they bump into that. And that's why I work so closely with each client I work with. But it's also why my clients achieve the results that they achieve, that I can say, I guarantee it. If you work with me and you feel like you didn't take huge strides into bringing about that vision, I'll give you your money back. Wow. And I've had it like that since I started doing it. And not one person has ever asked me. Now, people have told me I don't charge enough for what I do. But then when I ask them if they'll pay me more than what they had already paid me, they always say no, Paul. But that's what it is. And it's about like going through that process of that, So when I start working with somebody, I have a 12-step framework that we go through. Within that framework, it starts right out with that dynamic vision road mapping. And then we go through that process, and it's geared to start touching on that conditioning, those patterns, those habits of belief that we follow that we're not even aware of a lot of times, so that we can change them, because we can't get to where we want to go and keep those within us, because ultimately we never go out and get someplace. We come from that place within. Everything I do today, resigning from corporate America, everything else, it came from within, and then I saw that on my outside experience.
Right. Interesting.
You can't put So I mean, that's. I was going to try and come up with something funny, but I lost it. Which is funny in itself, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so for you, where to from now? For you, what's the plans?
Yeah, my life mission is to impact millions of people's lives. So I have this going and I'm doing what I'm doing. I had a little hiccup last year. 2019, I probably traveled 46 weeks out of the year. I actually bought an RV that I could put my motorcycle in so I could leave for a month at a time and do these tours, which is always what I wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
So with 2020 happening and everything kind of halted there, and it's shifting everything online, that's taken some time, but I've learned and grown, and we're, seeing that growing up and stuff. But really, what I'm really on fire about, first off, every single client I get to work with, it just lights me up. I'm also on top of that because, working with 7 clients at a time, the impact I can have doesn't equal millions, right?
Yeah.
But
right.
I have a company called Life Ignited Institute that I'm gonna train other coaches to coach like I coach. People who are really passionate like I am about what they're doing, and use these same tools and these same processes, and then they can help more people. Now you can start seeing where that spans out beyond just me and goes out from there. The other thing is I have a nonprofit organization I'm funding right now, and once it's enough, then I'm going to do it. And I've already got a pretty big team of probably 40 some people included with it and stuff, of going into high schools and mentoring 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And instead of figuring out what it is they want to go to school to get a paycheck for, to start really looking at what are the things you're passionate about, what are those gifts and those talents within inside of you, and start at an earlier age being able to bring those outwardly. Now, Paul, my core belief is this, which is why I'm as excited as I am. Every single time I help somebody go within, tap into those unique gifts and talents within them, and bring those outwardly, the entire world shifts to the better by doing so. So think about, here I am in my 50s doing this and really getting to the point where I'm seeing it grow by itself and things like that. Think about it, somebody coming out of high school, and maybe it's a whole different mission that they have, their purpose, but they get to step into that at such an earlier age and start bringing that. Think of the larger impact they can have in their lifetime. And think that, I get to be a part of this.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming for me.
Yeah, I mean, if we could all find a purpose in life at a young age, I'm sure the quality of life for us all would be that much greater.
Absolutely.
For so much of your life, you spend searching out to try and find what is it that's really your journey, what is it that really makes you tick. And some people never find it. Some people, I remember when I was at school, I had a friend whose father was an electrician, and I remember him telling me one day how his father hated being an electrician, but his father was an electrician and he'd be an electrician till he retired. And I thought that was so sad. But I'm sure that there's a lot of people in this world that would be the case for, that they actually in their life do something that they actually never particularly wanted to do. And it's
and you said that at an early age, coming out like that, to find out what their purpose is. But here's the thing, here's that big holdup to it, is we have layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of conditioning that we're living through. And most people are not even aware of it. Yeah. You have to get below those. And all of a sudden it starts springing. That's why whenever I work with somebody, I work with them on that dynamic vision road mapping. At the same time, we're working on the other side, on identifying those conditionings and shifting it and things like that. Because as they start doing so, I see people within weeks. I see their vision shifting and growing and expanding from what they originally wrote as they're shifting that other side, as they're shifting around and that conditioning from their past and stuff like that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But there's so much written and everything about finding your purpose. What do you like to do? What are you good at doing? I was great at building territories. I was great at meeting people. I was great at sales. I was really good at that, but I never liked it. Yeah. Because I was good at people, every what are those personality tests I've ever taken says I should be in sales, or I should be a sports agent, or I should be an inspirational speaker. I always laugh at that. But our purpose is within us, but we have to clear away the layers blocking us off from it.
So do you think, Joey, do you think that sometimes that some people actually, not in a healthy way, but get comfort in the conditioning?
Oh, yeah.
They grab and hold on to it because that's so much part of their life, the conditioning.
Absolutely, Paul. You ever meet somebody and they say, "Oh, I don't have fears. I don't have fears." Anytime somebody does, I go, "Well, you never step outside of your comfort zone then."
Yeah.
Our comfort zone, living within those patterns, that conditioning, living in our patterns of habit, living in things like that, that we have the most control there. The reason we have the most control there is because we know it so freaking well.
Yeah.
We know what it's like on a Sunday to already be dreading that Monday. We don't like it, but we know it.
Yeah.
We're comfortable in that misery. You have to get uncomfortable. People have to get uncomfortable with where they are enough to take a step into doing so. And one of the things I want anybody who ever listens to this to hear is your fears of stepping outside of your comfort zone. It can seem so tall, you can never get over it. And it can seem so far side to side, you can never go around it. Done the right way, your fears can be paper thin going through.
Yeah. So, Joey, I actually wrote a short article for my blog actually just the other day, which has got real parallels to that. And the article, what I talk about is about people, business owners, and being busy. In my experience, and I'm guilty of it, I'll put my hand up, but I know that there's a lot of business people out there who are guilty of it, is that we get this unhealthy security in being busy without ever stepping back to actually reflect on why we're busy. Are we busy doing good things, or are we busy doing bad things?
Spinning wheels, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel, this is another, I talked before about conditioning, getting comfort in it. I think it's the same sort of thing, that people get comfort in feeling that they're busy, and they're happy with that, not realizing they could be busy doing all the wrong things, and that being busy is holding them back. And the metaphor that I use in my blog is about a captain of a ship. You need to be up on deck, charting your course and watching out for obstacles. You can't be down in the boiler room stoking the fire and cleaning the boat and things like that. But that's what a lot of business owners do, is they're down, doing all these things that they shouldn't be doing, and not spending the time actually charting their course, planning their future. Because I think we get this unhealthy feeling that it's good to be busy, and comes back to your conditioning, that we're conditioned from a young age. Well, if you work hard, the key to success is working hard. So we think, oh, well, I'm really busy, I'm working hard, so that must be a good thing. But taking to your point earlier, where you said is like, if you just keep throwing your energy at something, and you're up against a brick wall, it's not going to change it. Instead of stepping back and maybe walking a few paces to the left or the right and finding the door. But we're so busy pushing as hard as we can against the wall, we're never taking the time to step back to actually see there's actually another way. It's just over to the right or to the left.
Oh boy, so many different things. I had one of the realtors I worked with in 2019, before the COVID and stuff. I worked with her, and when I met her, she said, "Joey, I don't even think I have a half hour a week available for a coaching call. I don't know where I'd find the time. I don't spend time with my family. I don't get to go to work out, and I don't get to spend time with friends. It's just work 7 days a week." And how many people live like that? Like, I used to think when I was younger, in my 30s, there was a while when I thought, if I just work hard enough, long enough, this thing has to work out.
Yeah.
It didn't. And it didn't, because when we're in that mode of spinning our wheels and things like that, when we're in that mode of trying harder to exhaustion and things like that, what happens is we miss the opportunities for it to show up easy. were in that mode of making it happen, make it happen, make it happen. So she ended up calling me and she said, and she had tears in her eyes, and we were on the phone, so I could tell there was something the matter with her. And I go, what's the matter? And she goes, Joseph, I just had to call you. Like, this has been my highest income year in 18 years that I've been doing real estate. And it's the only year of my life that I've taken 5 weeks off within the year. And I went on a 2-week vacation and her only ever 3-week vacation that she went to Israel with her husband and a group of people and things like that.
Yeah.
And it was her best year. And because what happens is just like that fly on the window, right? That tries harder and harder and harder to go through the window. And it tries and it tries and it tries. And what typically happens is it ends up dead on that windowsill, right?
Yeah.
I do this in my workshop, Paul, as I'll talk about that and I'll bring that in. And then about 20 minutes later or 15 minutes later, I'll bring it back up and I'll have it circled where the window's open this much. If that fly would have slowed down enough,
Yeah.
he would have seen that opportunity to drop down and go into freedom and he'd have been fine. And we are exactly the same way. We get going,
Yeah.
harder, more, massive efforts and all the, massive actions and all that stuff and everything. And what happens when we slow down, all of a sudden we hear a part of a conversation. All of a sudden we get an idea. All of a sudden we're not meant to be workhorses.
Yeah.
All of a sudden these things start showing up. And so many of my clients, like for me, I refer to my God as blue. And the reason I do that, I love blue. It's my branding colors, everything else. But the reason I do that is because I have a lot of conversations, people like you and I talking right now. And we talk, off of this about like the incredible things going on in life. And I'll go, how'd that happen? How'd that happen? And every one of those conversations, at some point, Paul, they'll go, I don't know. It came out of the blue. The gentleman I talked about with the 5 a.m. club, every week we talk, he is absolutely amazed at how a listing. Now, when I met this guy, he was working 2 full-time jobs and his passion was real estate. But he was given all of his time to the jobs and spending nothing hardly at all, trying to steal time to spend in his real estate. Within the time we worked together, he shifted it where now 50% of his time is real estate, 50% of his working hours, 50% of his time is the other 2 jobs. And all of a sudden he'll say, man, I almost don't even want to tell you anymore. Another listing showed up out of the blue, or somebody called me, that knew me from one of the other jobs, and there's somebody that knew somebody from the other job called me up. They want me to list their house, or they want to look for a house, or these things start happening.
Yeah.
And what I deal with my clients, what I help my clients do is learn to take inspired actions. That's different than massive actions. That's different than to-do lists. That's different than exhaustive, efforts, all of that.
Yeah.
We have to slow down to get in alignment to hear what those inspired actions are. But those are the ones, you ever meet those people, they feel like it seems like they put so little effort in and get huge results as outcomes. That's how the wealthiest 2% of the people live. Is they don't go spinning all the time. Is they go slow pace, they're calm, they're confident, and they take inspired actions that bring them the big results. It's not about massive actions. Anybody looking at massive actions in their life is looking in the total wrong direction. What we want to look for is massive results. And the only way to get those is by taking inspired actions.
Yeah. Yeah, and the challenge is to get people to step back and do that, because there's an inherent fear of stepping back because of our conditioning.
Yeah.
We're scared what we might find.
When I told that story earlier, when I moved down here and nothing was happening, it's like, oh my God, like I resigned from a 6-figure income and like all this stuff and everything. And here I am, and this isn't happening right now. Fear stepped in.
Yeah.
Fear is what took me, and old patterning is what took me to creating that list. Now, thank God I knew enough. Thank God I had a coach I was working with I could reach out to, that I didn't go back into taking the next step, and be in the full grain of that old pattern and condition replaying in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I hope to do is people that are in that place right now, people that are hearing this message right now, hopefully this resonates with them. and they can reach out, because those are the people that are going, no, I got this. I'm supposed to know how to do it. You know, a man doesn't ask questions, like all of that stuff. You can't really do it. But somebody that's at that point of going, man, I'm tired of working so hard and getting so little for it. I'm tired of feeling like I have these desires and I almost got to push them down because I don't want to use them. People who are, say, using food and overeating, and they're binge watching TV, and they're trying to avoid their life. I hope it touches some of those people and sparks them enough to give me a call for free and get on the phone and start talking about this, whether I can help them or whether it leads to a direction that does help them. That's my hopes of this right here.
Yeah. If we can all find our passion in life, our journey, the world would be a lot better place, wouldn't it? If we all
very much so. And it's not, you know, like I'm careful how I use the word passion, because I'm very passionate. I just did a video. I don't even know if I'll ever do anything with it, Paul, but I'm doing it's probably about a 30 to 45 minute movie that I'm putting together. I've decided to do it. It's like, you know, I scripted, I did all the manuscript, I did all the stuff. And we did the filming for the first time today. Outside of my office here is a studio. And so we did it out there today, you know, and even at 2 hours after we were done, I was so excited that I got to do that in my life. I'm so excited. Like my life is like, I feel like I'm living beyond what I ever felt like I lived before. And I did the video and I said, you know, I hope everybody that ever hears this gets an opportunity to live full out in your life, to experience this feeling of gratitude, of blessing, of excitement, of joy, of all of it merged together. It's so awesome. And that's my biggest desire in my life, is to help other people achieve that in their life. Yeah.
No, it's to push yourself outside your comfort zone and do things that you're not conditioned to do, but that you want to do, is incredibly rewarding. But
yeah, and you know, Bob Proctor talks about this, and he's one of my mentors, but he talks about this. He says, you know, in order to bring about change in your life, you have to take abnormal actions.
Yeah.
Continuing to take the same actions that are normal are never going to get you there. You have to take abnormal actions. When you take abnormal actions, it's going to be uncomfortable, right? It's outside your comfort zone. It's going to be uncomfortable. But that's the only way to get there. So having somebody who's been through that, who can help go through that and stuff, makes all the difference in the world. Kind of like climbing Mount Everest. You can do it alone. You might make the top. You might not. If you have the amount of time to go through everything it's going to go through, if you have, you know, like all the abilities to deal with all the frustrations, that's all great and everything. And there's a chance you might make it. Bring in a guide of somebody who's maneuvered that path, who knows the weather trends, who knows what to look for, who knows the paths to take and not to take, and all of that.
Yeah.
You have a much better shot of making it to the top of Mount Everest and taking that picture shot up there. This is exactly the same way. People can keep going about it alone. They can keep getting scraps of things from either books, workshops, webinars, you know, all these things and everything, you know. But like I said, you know, somebody can take less money than a 3 or 5 day, you know, massive action seminar, take less money than that, work with me for 6 months, and be guaranteed to see themselves walking in that changed life.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Joey. It's been really enjoyable. What we're going to do now, for those that are listening or watching this, is we do it as a separate recording, because some people just want to have a bite-sized listen to it, but we're going to also do Read to Succeed. But in terms of insights into success, thank you so much. And yeah, I most definitely want to stay in touch. I love your approach. I think you've helped answered for me the question about why so many people do these courses but just don't seem to get the benefit. It makes absolute sense to me what you're saying, and I know that it impacts on me, and I'm sure it impacts on a lot of people out there, where we are very much conditioned on things, and until we break those patterns, it's very difficult to make that change. And we've got to, it's a cliche, but work smarter, not harder. You know, we've got to take a step back. Take a step back, rather than keep pushing and pushing at that door. Take a step back, pause, and then work out your path from there.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot from this. So thank you so much. And
Yeah,
really
and I
appreciate it.
really enjoyed the conversation. I'm looking forward to getting to communicate with you beyond this and stuff, Paul. Like,
It's
you're just an incredible person. And I got to tell you, I don't know how much feedback you get from listeners, but like, I'm so grateful you do what you do. I'm sure you face some fears and roadblocks and hiccups and things like that along the path, but that you're doing this and having this mark on people, man, it's just overwhelming, and seeing your joy in this and stuff. Now, one of the things I'd like to leave with, if I could,
Yes,
is
go for it.
anybody who wants to reach out to me,
Yeah.
they can go to a site I have all set up. It's called coachwithjoseph.com. CoachWithJoseph.com, coachwithjoseph.com. And they can pull up my personal calendar, and they can schedule a block of time, an hour block of time, that we can get on the phone one-on-one with me personally and that person, and talk about these things, talk about where you're running into those walls, talk about sparking that vision for you, and gain some tools and understandings that you can walk away from that call with, apply to your life, and start bringing about changes right from there.
And the great thing is, with technology being the way it is, it doesn't matter that you're halfway across the world at all. With Skype or whatever you choose to use, Teams, it's no problem at all, is it? In fact,
No, not at all.
it's fun, and it's exciting to get perspective from someone maybe that is living in a little bit of a different environment. So I can learn a lot from each other from it. So that's
absolutely great. Yeah, and I've worked with clients around the world. So
yeah,
the only thing is I only speak English, so that could be a limitation in certain areas, Paul.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joey. I really appreciate it, and I certainly sincerely intend to stay in touch. So thank you very much.
Me as well. Thank you.
All right. Take care.